There is no scenario where Abrego Garcia will be in the United States again.
Before you're punished for a crime where you are supposed to have your day in court. Justice in this country means getting sent to prison and then investigated.
Abrego Garcia is finally back in the country after being sent to a death camp by the Trump administration, where he then lied about his ability to bring him back to the American people, to Congress, to the judicial system, only for him to now face charges that he's back, something never mentioned prior to his removal, and that only become weaker the more you learn about them. So we're going to dive into all of that. First, leave us a like on the video, lets us know you enjoy the content, gives us a huge boost in the algorithm, and let's jump into the discourse.
The reality is, when the Trump administration sent Abrego Garcia to El Salvador, they did not actually have any reason for doing so. Because in 2019, an immigration judge granted him a legal status that let him live and work in the country legally. 57 days ago, the Supreme Court ruled, without dissent, by the way, that Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador was in fact illegal. And the court ordered the Trump administration to facilitate his return. But the Trump administration wouldn't do it. They insisted that was because he was in El Salvador. The issue was diplomatic, they said, and not something they could control. They insisted repeatedly there was no way to bring him back, that it was completely outside of their control. 29 days ago, this was the stance of Trump's Homeland Security Secretary.
There is no scenario where Abrego Garcia will be in the United States again.
And it's crazy that only in lawless MAGA country could these people get away scot-free with these brazen lies while pretending to care about transparency, while they lie to Congress, the courts, and the American people. Now remember, Democrats evil because they lied about Joe Biden being sharper than he was, but Trump administration good for lying to keep an innocent man in a literal death camp without due process in a foreign country he had a court order to not be sent to. Those are the people I can't take serious, who want to hold those kind of positions. And we'll get into the charges in a second, because I love that MAGA is now trying to throw them around as if like it justifies everything Trump did, when it's like, you haven't read the indictment if you're saying that. Or, I mean, because if you believe the standard of evidence against Abrego Garcia, you absolutely have to believe every single charge ever against Donald Trump, because the standard of evidence against Abrego Garcia is down here, standard of evidence against Trump up here. It's seriously that bad. If MAGA had any shame, they would care about that, but they don't. So
today, the Trump administration did bring Abrego Garcia back, but they didn't do it to comply with the Supreme Court's orders. Today, they brought him back to the United States to criminally charge him with human trafficking. The allegations the Justice Department laid out against Abrego Garcia today are incredibly serious, but they are also just allegations. He could have done all of these things they allege. He also could be completely innocent. That is why in this country, you are supposed to have due process. Before you're punished for a crime where you are supposed to have your day in court, you are supposed to be tried and convicted if you are guilty by a jury of your peers. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was sent to prison in El Salvador without any of that. And ABC News reports tonight that the allegations Abrego Garcia was charged with today stem from an investigation that started in April, which, by the way, is the month after the Trump administration sent him to El Salvador.
And it is important to note first that none of this even matters. This isn't a debate that really needs to be had. They still concede they sent him prior to even investigating any allegations. They had no reason to think he had done criminal acts. And even if he had done every single crime they allege, he still deserves due process, was deported without it, and there was no way to know he did those without going through court, right? Just allegations from the government isn't enough. With that being said, the charges are maybe the weakest attempt at trying to save face I've ever seen from the clearly scrambling Trump administration to make some justification for their unconstitutional and immoral actions. They're predicating an entire human trafficking scandal conspiracy off of one traffic stop in 2022 where Abrego Garcia was working construction and some of the workers were undocumented. On top of that, right, on top of that evidence, a top prosecutor resigned days after this was filed, right? Aside from that, it's being predicated on, well, him being around the undocumented migrants, and then, the hearsay of him being on MS-13, which we know comes from a guy who gave it to an informant, who then said it to the investigation, where the only evidence that the first person even had that he was MS-13 was he was in a Chicago Bulls hat. Like, you can't. This is enough. You can't make this up. This is enough for MAGA. But the dozens of testimonies against Trump, countless emails, phone communications, audio recording, literally the filed documents and more isn't enough of proof against Trump crime, and that's all fake news. Like, they're just not serious people.
This is what American justice looks like.
That was the Attorney General of the United States of America today, saying that justice in this country means getting sent to prison and then investigated, sent to a foreign prison for months and then charged with a crime. That is what the Trump administration thinks justice looks like, which tells you a whole lot.
Sent to a foreign death camp at that, against court orders at that, without an immigration hearing, let alone a criminal trial at that, only to be there for weeks, then return to seemingly trumped up charges by Trump's partisan DOJ, full of those who lack experience but make up for it with blind loyalty, where I think the biggest thing to remember here is like, this is all a distraction. He could have done all of these things, and the Trump administration is not only still entirely in the wrong, but lied to Congress, lied to the courts, and defied the Supreme Court, all with impunity, which is a scary precedent to set. But then it gets even scarier when you read into the charges and you realize that they're literally scrambled to put this together to try and save face and justify what they did rather than just take accountability and bring him back when they messed up.